Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Heart of CX. I am Joanna Palmer, and with me is Max Ball. And Max, we have a guest on the show today.
Yes, absolutely. Today we have Stacy Sherman. She's a customer experience leader, keynote speaker, author, podcaster, all about doing customer experience right. And she's created a heart and science framework that accelerates customer employee loyalty, referrals, revenue. And this is just such a passion project for her. And it's just so exciting to get her here, hear her passion about customer experience and to share it with her. Stacy, welcome. I'll give you a chance to just say hello and anything else in your background you want to talk about.
Yes, I'm happy to be here and talking about my favorite topics and the common ground that we have about bringing the heart to work and how to differentiate brands through great customer experiences, or what I call doing CX right. And employees, we know, is a huge part of that.
Yeah, it sure is. And that's really, employees is right at the heart of what we want to talk about today, which is the Great Resignation. Yeah. And I think you were the one that came up with the idea, which I think is a great twist on this. There's a lot of talk out there about agents leaving and all of this, but some of what we decided we wanted to talk about today was, what about when managers leave? And how do you avoid having managers leave, etc.? So maybe you want to talk a little about why you thought this would be a good thing for us to get into today.
Yeah, I do. First of all, I spend most of my week, besides when with family, is at a corporate job, and many corporate jobs I've had over time. And even though it's the Great Resignation now, it is, it's going to continue. People's mindsets have changed, and what they need has changed. I've changed. You've changed. So I believe that driving more awareness to how to keep your best employees, and certainly you want to coach the ones that are not your A players and B players. But I believe that there's a lot in our control, more than we think or realize that we can do. And I want to see people really happy at work, loving what they do, because it does transfer to customer experience. And you and I and the listeners are also consumers. So if it's all circular, I mean, we're all having these experiences.
And I love what you said about making sure that your team loves what they do. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think back on my own experiences as a leader, and I had progressed in my career and always loved being in the customer experience space. And I didn't understand people who didn't love what they did. It just didn't resonate with me because I'd never experienced it before. And then, in terms of pivoting my career a little, I pivoted, moved out or away a little bit from the customer experience space. And all of a sudden, I got it. I got the whole, wow, it feels like a job. It's tough to get up in the morning and show up and be passionate. So I love that. Any thoughts on that, Stacy?
Yes. Really importantly, yes, we have a customer experience role in a formal way in many, many companies. However, I also go around the companies that I've always been at, and even the ones that I'm not at, to say, you have a CX job. If you're in finance, here's how you have a CX job. If you're in HR, if you're in legal, if you're obviously the front line, but everybody has a CX job. So I want people to embrace that and all that it means.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That's so critical. So I have a question. Being an agent is not fun. I mean, there's some agent jobs that are fun, but if you are doing healthcare insurance and you're having to spend your days telling somebody they're being denied for something that they feel like they should be getting paid for, or something that just where the calls are really hard, how do you, even if you've got a passion for it, there comes a point where you're just beat down. How do you keep people together? How do you keep them focused? What are some tricks? And both of you I'm sure have a lot of ideas here. So
Yes. So I can begin. One thing is, as a leader, you must have empathy and listen. They're people. And as human beings, we need to get things off our chest, even if it's just to vent. Sometimes there's not a solution, but just the mere act of
right. Yeah.
talking and somebody listening, you feel better. It's, I can't explain why, but psychologists can. So that's one thing is I like to take people aside and carve out time in the week, in the month, to be able to allow them to talk through it. That's one thing. The second thing is understanding what motivates them. And by doing that, so for example, one employee I have says, I really want to understand more about how their role impacts the bigger business. And I said, you know what? Let's make sure that you come to a meeting, a field office meeting, and let you see that how you connect to the ultimate goals and to the business and how important you are. So when they are able to do that, now it's not just a check the box job. They feel empowered and they feel valued, and it goes so far.
Yeah,
That's good.
And to add on to that, I really think that there is this trust factor that you as a leader have an obligation to build that trust with your employee base. And so it builds on the empathy thought, in just listening and learning about them as a whole person. Yes, they work for you for probably 8+ hours a day, but they've also got 16 other hours of their day that make up them as that person. And so understanding all of those components and listening to what's going on in their other life and in their other roles and responsibilities, it's so critical to really build that trust, build that open communication, and build the depth of relationship that you need to be able to really build loyalty to the company there. So just knowing their children's names, asking about their children, knowing what their children do, or knowing whether they're a dog person or a cat person, and knowing their pet names, and just continuing that conversation as well, asking them how their parents doing, how their child's doing, how their dog's doing, making mental notes or physical notes of what's going on in their life, and then circling back the next week and making sure that you're asking those questions as well as coaching on performance. I think it's so critical.
Yes. I also believe that whether it's reps, call center, or any job, I believe career paths and knowing what your people want is essential. And it doesn't happen enough in companies. It becomes, or it can't be, where you're checking a box. It's, mid-year review time or end of year, and you're getting it done in the system because it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
And if company leaders really do it right and understand their people, because not everybody is looking for the next job title. Some people might want money. Some people might want more vacation time. Some people, it completely varies by individual. So there's no cookie cutter approach. You have to really take it seriously and then help those individuals and advocate for them to get to where they want. If that was done, this great resignation would be minimized.
And so to build on that as well, Stacy, what if they don't know what they want? What is the leader's obligation there?
I love that question. And my answer is something I did during COVID when everybody was really down. We read Simon Sinek's The Start with the Why, and we had a book club. And what it did was we helped each other, my team, we talked through everybody's why to help them figure out what's the why. Or some was at a starting point and some knew it very well. But the point is, talk about your why, help each other, not just as the leader, but also among your colleagues, and have the conversations over lunch. And then when you know each other's why, you really can support them. That's just one example.
Yeah, that is a great example. And as we continue the conversation, it really has dawned on me that leadership in business today is just as much psychology as it is business. And so, how do you, as a leader, ensure that you're teaching these soft skills, ensure that you're teaching the psychology associated with the organization and being a great leader, just as much as you're teaching how to run the business?
Yeah, great question again. So I believe that people learn through tangible examples.
Mhm.
So for example, if you have customer feedback and you are able to take that to all your meetings, you or salespeople bring the feedback, and then take the feedback, the good ones and the ones that are opportunity, both, and say to your team, okay, let's read this or listen to call center calls, whatever it might be. Let's problem solve, and let's also celebrate what was done right. And so those give people the in action, they're listening and they're finding what were good examples to repeat and where was the mark missed. So sometimes people just read from a script, and yet then the next question makes no sense based on the customer answer. So you use those examples and then help people really understand and action plan around what's real, not hypothetical. One more thing. Psychological safety, to me, is another way that you retain employees. We're really good in workplaces around safety, physical, but psychological is a miss. And that's another way where if you make it safe for teams to disagree, to have uncomfortable conversations, and to show up as their best selves without fear, that is another way to reduce people leaving.
I love that.
So you guys are making the job of a call center manager sound really intimidating to me. You've got to be a therapist. You've got to go get real data, bring it to management, bring it to your people to show them, and bring it to your people and tell them you did this totally wrong in a way that's totally loving and supportive and caring so they feel good about it. So what about the care and feeding of the managers? What do you need to do there? If you're an executive and you need to keep a manager, what does that look like?
This one touches my heart a lot because, again, Simon Sinek says leaders eat last, but leaders have to eat too.
Right. Yeah. Well said.
And people don't talk about that a lot. They don't. So I believe that the same things we're talking about here really applies to every level of the company. It is the psychological safety. It is checking in, not just at review time, to say, how are you? And when someone answers, you say, okay, now how are you really?
Right.
Okay. And the expression of appreciation, giving credit where it's due. And making life work fun too. It's not taboo to have fun. So career paths, as we talked about, Of course that matters to leaders. They're giving their heart and soul to their people. They also need to feel like someone's got their back or they will leave.
So I want to pick up on the career path thing, because it's the rare contact center that has a career path beyond maybe a supervisor or a manager. So many organizations like, nope, you guys are over here, and isn't that great? You have your own little world. Go swim. You're not ever leaving there. Can that mindset be broken? Have you seen that mindset broken? Do you have good examples or thoughts about how do you change that?
Say the question again. How do you change the call
How do you
center?
so many organizations I've seen, the contact, there's no career path out of the contact center.
Okay, yes. So my answer is you have to expose them to what's possible. And that's why I said before, bring them to a sales meeting, bring them to other parts of the organization so that they understand how they impact the business, and they could see other areas of opportunity and then work with their manager to say, you know what? I love that role or that position or those tasks. How can I get there? Let's work on a plan. But they may not even know what they don't know. And as a leader, it's your job to help expose them.
Okay. And I like that. So it's not, let's go make the CEO see this differently. It's, if you've got an agent who wants to go somewhere, enable them to be able to do it.
Yes. Yes. Give them the opportunities to see, to hear, to learn. And don't just wait for them to ask, because they may be shy or they may not know. They might not have the confidence. So yes, I do believe we have to advocate, as I teach my kids in school days. You have to self-advocate, but you also need someone to have your back to say, I'm looking out for you. I want to expose you to what's possible.
Mm-hmm. And I do like going back to a statement you said earlier. It is really about understanding your employees. It's really about understanding what their desires are and how different people want different things. It's not all about titles. It's not all about growth. It really depends on the season that they're in their careers, and whether they want to move up and further in their career path, or whether they're happy where they are and they may just want more PTO, more money. And I think it's really important to underline that you can't force people, or you shouldn't force people into a career path that they're not interested in.
You have to talk to your employees. You have to ask them what's important to them, which has changed over the year or two. Just the way you do ask your customers about their needs so that you can solve their problems with the right products and services and solutions. It's no different for employees to make sure that you can motivate them, that they're engaged, that they feel appreciated. It's the same.
Right, right. And as you think about leaders and leaders who lead leaders, what is your advice there in terms of really that focus on leaders who lead leaders? You mentioned that leaders have to eat too, but really, what are some of those best practices?
I would say communication is so important. There's many times in my career I was not invited to the table where the decisions were made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's a huge red flag.
Right. You don't want to be Aaron Burr. You want to be in the room where it happens.
That's exactly. I love that. Yes, Hamilton is. I watched that show many times. But yes, it is true. You want the choice to be in the room where it happens. There's cases where maybe you can't be, but when you're given the choice, that is tremendous. And when you're not given the choice, it's a message.
Yeah.
That is
That's very
powerful.
true.
When you're not given a choice, that's a message. I love that.
So what if you actually lose a manager? How do you survive that? What is that? What does the pain of that look like? And how do you move on from that and make it work?
You don't stay quiet.
Mm.
In other words, I've seen this too much where someone leaves and it becomes like this elephant in the room. Everybody's tiptoeing. Nobody's talking about it. It's uncomfortable. There's questions. Nobody knows. And I say, do the opposite. I say, tell the truth. Talk about, okay, this sucks. And then we're going to rally. And this is what we're going to do together because we're a family. And that it doesn't change what happened, but it does change people's reactions and ability to move forward. And that's my answer. I really believe in it.
Yeah. And I really like the transparency part of that. We talk about transparency quite a bit in the customer journey, but it's ever so critical in the employee journey as well, because if you're not transparent, then that's when the stories start.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a theme that's gone across this entire conversation.
Yep, definitely.
Well, if you also think about the one word that comes to mind with everything we said, there's one word that comes to my mind, which is trust. Well, how do you get trust? You have to deliver on the promise. You have to keep it real. You have to communicate. You have to support people the way they want to, because if you don't, they see through it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is about building trust with your employees who then fuel the same with customers.
Right.
And it's really that basic.
I love that, especially, the thing that we've kind of assumed and you just finally brought home, treating your agents, treating your call center, contact center right. That's about your customers. That and Stacy, you made the point earlier, it's not just the contact center, it's the whole company, but that's the front line, and making sure the front line gets the care and feeding they need. It's so critical.
And back office. And
Yes.
the back office.
Yeah.
They own the customer experience, but may not realize how. And leaders help them see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think it's
the behavior that the leaders model is ultimately the behavior that the employees will model in their interactions, whether they are internal interactions or customer interactions.
Yes.
I was talking to a man named Daniel Ord, who, Joanna, we've talked to, and he had a great line the other day. He said, you can't have empathetic agents in a non-empathetic office. And I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it's true.
So
It's true. But why is this so hard? I mean, that's what I can't grapple.
right. And I was just wondering, so what if you don't have empathy at the core of your company? How can you, as a manager, manage up and manage down to build that culture, perhaps from the back of the bus, right? What are some tips there, Stacy?
My answer is, first of all, you have to want to be a change agent. Number one. And number two, you have to be resilient. You have to know there's going to be a lot of naysayers. And especially in a very large corporation, there's a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of red tape. You have to be trained and mentally strong to want the change, live the change, and be patient. It takes time. But with that and the right people rallied with you, anything is possible. Everything's possible.
Excellent.
what great note to close on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you don't have the right culture, and hopefully the majority of the folks listening do have that right culture in the company, be the change agent, be resilient, and really drive the change that's necessary to build that better culture for the better of the employees and ultimately the betterment of the customers as well.
Yes. And I'll say that if you did everything in your power to do all of that with time, because it takes time, you might be in the wrong room.
Yeah, that's a possibility. If it's not turning, it's not. Sadly, there are cases where it's just not going to turn. No.
And to be smart enough to know the difference.
Yes,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
to be willing when it is the right place to just keep digging in and pushing forward and making it happen. Because just because it's the right place doesn't mean it's easy.
No, but to conclude, if you're leaders, again, keeping leaders, that top leader needs to say, you know what, this is hard. I see you are going against gravity, but I have your back. Just keep going. We're going to make it happen. Those words are so powerful and so easy to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, which leads to, and then make sure you're backing it up with actions, which is not the easy part.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Stacy. Such great insights today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this was a real pleasure. Thanks a whole lot. Talk to you soon.